They fired me after 15 years of loyalty, leaving me with nothing but anger. But what they didn't know? I was the one who had built the system they relied on to stay afloat. I walked away, but came back stronger than they ever imagined. Want to know how I did it? Hit subscribe and let's dive into the story. It all started the morning I walked into the office, thinking it was just another day. The usual hum of the office filled the air. Laughter, phones ringing, typing. I had been working at the company for 15 years. I was more than just an employee. I was the lifeblood of the business. I designed the software that kept everything running smoothly, and for years, I was their go-to problem solver. When the company faced challenges, they turned to me. I had put in everything, my time, my energy, and my passion. But that morning, everything changed. I had been called into a meeting with my boss, Jim. Jim had always been a decent guy, someone who'd offer a kind word here and there. He was the type of manager who appreciated hard work, but was also distant enough to never really understand the pressure we all felt on the inside. He never fully appreciated the work I did, not in the way he should have. Still, I didn't expect what was coming. When I walked into his office, the door shut behind me with an unsettling finality. I sat down, trying to read his expression. His face was stern, his eyes unreadable. It was unlike any of our previous meetings where he'd crack a joke or bring up a trivial topic to break the ice. No, today was different. "Emily," he said, his voice cold. "We've been reviewing the company's direction, and after careful consideration, we've decided to let you go." I froze. "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We've found someone else who can take the company in a new direction. Your performance has been solid, but we need a fresh perspective," Jim said, his words as blunt as a sledgehammer. The room seemed to close in on me. I had given them everything. 15 years of my life. And this? This was how they repaid me? It felt like a betrayal, a punch to the gut. I had spent sleepless nights working on systems that ran their entire business, fixing problems no one else even knew about. I had stayed late, gone above and beyond, and this was the thanks I got? My mind raced, trying to process it all. I've built this company's backbone," I said, trying to hold back tears. "I created the software that keeps this company running. Without me, your entire system will collapse." Jim didn't even flinch. "You're replaceable, Emily. The company has evolved, and we need someone who can take us to the next level. Please pack up your things and leave today. We'll have HR escort you out." The words hit me like a tidal wave, and the sting of them didn't lessen. I was being pushed out, unceremoniously. All my hard work meant nothing to him, to the company. I stood up, unable to speak another word, and left his office in a daze. I could feel my world crashing down around me as I packed up my things. I wasn't just losing my job, I was losing my identity. For so long, I had defined myself by my work, by the systems I built, and now I was being discarded like an old piece of software, no longer needed, no longer valuable. But as I walked out of the building that day, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. They had made a huge mistake, and I would make them regret it. It wasn't just about the job or the money anymore. This was personal. They had underestimated me, and now they would see what happens when you mess with someone who knows exactly how much power they have. The software I had built was still in use, and I had designed it in such a way that no one else could understand it fully. Only me. I wasn't done yet. This betrayal, this moment of weakness on their part, had given me a chance to fight back. Not just for myself, but for every person who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or discarded. I was going to take control, and I was going to do it on my terms. The first step was simple. I needed access to their system. I knew the back doors, the hidden vulnerabilities, and the key places where the company was exposed. I had built this system from the ground up, and now it was time to use it against them. The following days were a blur of activity. I had been fired, my life turned upside down, but I wasn't the type to dwell on setbacks for long. The adrenaline coursing through me was exactly what I needed. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about making them realize that firing me had been their biggest mistake. I wasn't just an employee. They had fired the very foundation on which the company stood. I started by reaching out to a few trusted colleagues who still worked at the company. These weren't just ordinary colleagues. These were people who had seen the behind-the-scenes work I'd done. They knew how much of the company's infrastructure I had built, and how integral I had been to its success. They didn't know the extent of my plan yet, but they would. I just needed them to buy in. I contacted Greg, a senior developer who had worked closely with me on several high-profile projects. I knew he was disgruntled with the way things were being run under Ryan's leadership, but he had always been loyal to the company. It was time to change that. I sent him an encrypted message late one night, keeping the tone casual, as if it was just a friendly check-in. "Hey Greg, long time no talk. Hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about the old days and how things have shifted at the company. I know you're still at the helm, but I'm hearing things are falling apart. Let me know if you ever need help fixing the system." I didn't give him the full details, but I knew he would be curious. After all, he'd been there when we built the system, and he knew the power it held. It didn't take long for him to respond. We arranged to meet in person, in a quiet cafe far from the company's prying eyes. When we met, Greg didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know what you're up to," he said quietly, leaning in. "Things are bad. Ryan doesn't know what he's doing. We're losing clients, the system is falling apart, and people are starting to whisper about you." I nodded, keeping my voice low. "Good. That's exactly what I want to hear." Greg gave me a concerned look. "You know, if you go after them like this, it could get ugly. You were a huge part of their success. But I get it. Ryan's not cut out for this. He's always been a figurehead, not a real leader. You were always the one who made the system work." "I didn't want to be pushed out," I said, my voice thick with resolve. "But now that I'm gone, I can't just sit back and let them ruin everything I built. They think they can replace me, but they don't even understand the system. If it breaks, they'll be out of business. And guess what? I'm the only one who knows how to fix it." Greg shifted uncomfortably. "What are you thinking?" "It's simple," I replied. "I'm going to let them fall apart on their own. They'll realize their mistake soon enough. But when they come crawling back, I'll have all the leverage I need. I'll negotiate from a position of power. And then, when they beg me to come back, I'll make sure I get what I'm owed." Greg didn't say anything for a moment. I could tell he was weighing the risks, but in the end, he knew what needed to be done. He was just as tired of Ryan's incompetent leadership as I was. "I'm with you," he said, his voice steady. "But this is going to take time. They won't just give up without a fight." I smiled, knowing that this was only the beginning. "I'm not in a rush. Let them feel the pressure. The cracks are already showing. They'll crack even more as things go south. I just need to be patient. And when the time comes, I'll make them regret ever letting me go." Over the next few days, I continued to work behind the scenes, quietly watching as the company's operations began to deteriorate. I made sure to stay out of sight, but every move I made was strategic. I knew the software inside and out. I knew the weak points, the vulnerabilities. I started slowly introducing small issues into the system. Nothing too obvious, just enough to create confusion and frustration. Each time something went wrong, Ryan would scramble, trying to fix the issue. But without me, he had no idea how to troubleshoot or repair the damage. The cracks began to widen. Employees were frustrated, clients were complaining, and the company was starting to lose its reputation. It wasn't long before the board members were beginning to notice the problems. They couldn't ignore the mounting issues any longer. And then, just as I had anticipated, the calls started coming in. It wasn't just Greg now. Other senior staff members were reaching out, unsure of how to proceed. I could hear the desperation in their voices. "We need you," Greg said one evening, his tone filled with urgency. "The system's broken. Ryan's too stubborn to admit it, but we can't keep going like this. The clients are threatening to pull out, and the software is only getting worse. You're the only one who knows how to fix it." I felt a sense of vindication flood through me. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. They needed me, and now it was my turn to make them pay for firing me. The tension in the company reached a boiling point. Samantha had been watching everything unfold from the outside, and every day the cracks in the company grew deeper. The software system that she had designed, the one that was the backbone of their operations, was now deteriorating under the weight of Ryan's incompetence. He was struggling to keep the system running, and the staff was beginning to question his ability to lead. Employees were starting to voice their concerns more openly, and clients, once loyal to the company, were becoming frustrated. They had been promised a cutting-edge service, and now they were being met with nothing but delays and glitches. Word was getting out, and the company's reputation was on the line. I couldn't have planned it better if I tried. Everything was falling apart just as I had envisioned. But I wasn't going to let it happen without putting the final pieces of my plan into motion. The system that had once been my creation was now the company's greatest liability, and I was the only one who knew how to fix it. But more than that, I was the one who could expose just how much Ryan's leadership had failed. The first step was simple. I needed to gain full access to the company's internal systems again, not just as a former employee, but as a key player who knew exactly how to manipulate the software to my advantage. I had already set the groundwork with Greg, but now I needed to do more. I had to get the board to see just how critical I was to the company's success. I called Greg one afternoon. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "What's the situation now?" I asked. "They're panicking," he replied, his voice filled with frustration. "The system's crashing more frequently. Clients are pulling out, and Ryan is trying to blame everything on the upgrades that were supposed to fix it. But the more he talks, the worse it gets." This was the opening I needed. "You need to get me in, Greg. We can't afford to keep playing games. The board needs to know what's really happening. I'm going to show them just how deep the problems go." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. I could tell Greg was hesitant. "Are you sure about this? If Ryan finds out you're behind all this, it'll escalate. He'll do everything he can to stop you." I chuckled, the sound almost bitter. "Let him try. I'm not here to be the victim anymore. I'm here to take control, Greg. I'm going to make sure they know exactly how much I built and how much they stand to lose without me." Greg sighed. "All right, I'll do what I can. But you need to be careful. The board is already starting to question Ryan. If we can't turn this around fast, they might just pull the plug on the whole thing." I hung up the phone with a sense of purpose. I knew what I had to do. The company was at a crossroads, and I was the only one who could turn it around. But I wasn't doing it for them. I wasn't fixing things just to get my old job back. I was doing it to show them that they needed me. The next few days were spent in quiet preparation. I made sure to stay under the radar, avoiding anyone who could trace my movements back to the company. The last thing I wanted was for Ryan or the board to realize I was actively orchestrating the downfall. No, I needed them to come to me, to realize just how much of a lifeline I was. By the time I was ready, the situation had become critical. The company was on the brink of losing major contracts, and internal systems were beginning to crash regularly. It was the perfect storm. I took a deep breath, accessed the company's systems, and slowly began inserting myself back into the fold. I fixed the issues quietly at first, small patches, minor updates. But the more I worked, the more the company's systems began to run like they had when I was in charge. The changes were noticeable almost immediately. The glitches stopped. The performance improved. Clients began to take notice. The company wasn't just surviving, it was starting to recover. Greg called me a few days later, and his voice was a mix of excitement and disbelief. "You've done it," he said. "The system is working again. The board is asking about you, Emily. They're starting to realize just how much of this was you. Ryan is on the defensive. It's only a matter of time before they come to you." I smiled to myself. It was working. They were starting to realize their mistake. But I wasn't done yet. I wasn't just going to fix things and leave. I was going to make them beg for my help. And when they did, I would be in control. The game was just beginning. As the software issues slowly started to clear up, Samantha found herself at the center of a whirlwind. Her meticulous work on the system had begun to pay off, but she knew it wasn't just the system that needed fixing. Ryan was still the CEO, still sitting at the top of the company, and he was oblivious to the fact that his position was already slipping. He still thought he could control the narrative, that he could somehow hold on to his authority. But what he didn't know was that the walls were closing in on him, and they were closing in fast. Ryan began to notice the changes. The system was running smoothly again, clients were praising the improvements, and the team's morale was rising. He couldn't fathom why things were getting better so quickly. He had no idea that someone, no, the person he had fired, was the one behind it all. But Samantha wasn't just fixing the problems. She was preparing for the final step of her plan, and it was about to be executed with precision. Samantha wasn't going to rush her return. She had already built the foundation for her re-entry into the company, and now she needed to make her move count. The next step would be the most important: her confrontation with Ryan. It wasn't a confrontation based on anger. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. No, this was about control. Samantha needed to take back what was hers. She had spent years being the unsung hero of the company, and now she had the opportunity to be the one calling the shots. And she was going to do it in a way that left no doubt who the real power was. The first move came when she was contacted by Greg. "Samantha," he said, his voice low but urgent, "the board wants a meeting with you. They're questioning Ryan's leadership. They know the system's been fixed, and now they're starting to realize who did it." Samantha's heart raced. She had expected this moment, but hearing it from Greg made it feel all too real. The board was beginning to wake up. They could see what she had done, and they were starting to recognize her value. It was time to put everything into place. But Ryan wasn't going to go down without a fight. Samantha could already hear the desperation in his voice as he tried to make his case to the board. He claimed that the improvements were a result of his new leadership strategy, even though everyone knew it was Samantha who had restored the system. He was starting to scramble, trying to cover up the cracks that had been exposed. It was clear that he wasn't the leader he claimed to be. Samantha knew it was time to act. She scheduled a meeting with the board, positioning herself as the expert, because she was. She had the knowledge, the skills, and the proven track record to lead the company forward. She wasn't just going to walk in and demand the position. She was going to show them why she was the one who had always been in charge behind the scenes. On the day of the meeting, Samantha walked into the boardroom with a quiet confidence. She knew that this moment would define everything. As she sat down across from the board members, she could see the doubt in their eyes. They had been burned by Ryan, and now they were looking for someone who could restore their faith in the company's future. Samantha was ready to give them that. She began by outlining the improvements she had made to the system, pointing out how each change had contributed to the company's recovery. But she didn't stop there. She asked the board members to consider what would have happened if she hadn't stepped in. Would the company still be operating, or would it have continued its downward spiral under Ryan's leadership? She didn't have to say it outright. The answer was obvious. "Ryan has done his best," Samantha said, her voice steady but firm. "But his best wasn't good enough. He's had his chance to lead, and it hasn't worked. It's time for the company to move forward, with leadership that understands the system, understands innovation, and understands what it takes to keep us ahead of the competition. The board members exchanged glances, and Samantha could see that her words had struck a chord. They knew the company was at a crossroads, and they needed someone who could take it to the next level. But the question was, would they side with her, or would they stick with Ryan? Ryan had tried to sell them on his vision, but Samantha was showing them the reality. She wasn't just talking about fixing the software. She was talking about rebuilding the company, about changing the culture, about creating something sustainable. The board knew that if they didn't act now, they could lose everything. As the meeting ended, Samantha was asked to step out while the board deliberated. She sat in the hallway, her hands sweating, but her mind clear. She had done everything she could. The decision was now in the hands of the board. When they finally called her back in, she knew what the answer would be. The board had made their decision, and it was a victory that felt sweeter than anything she could have imagined. With the board's support firmly behind her, Samantha walked back into the company with the knowledge that she was now in control. But the weight of responsibility was heavier than she had anticipated. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, restructuring, and decision-making. There was no turning back now. Samantha wasn't just going to fix the company's problems, she was going to overhaul the entire way it operated. Her first major decision was to streamline the leadership team. She knew that to truly take the company in a new direction, she couldn't hold on to the old ways. Ryan had been a figurehead, and many of the people in leadership had been loyal to him, not her. She needed fresh blood, fresh ideas, and most importantly, people who were aligned with her vision. The first person she hired was Zoe, a brilliant strategist with years of experience at a competing tech firm. Samantha had worked with her briefly on a few projects and knew that Zoe had the drive, intelligence, and creativity to lead the company in new directions. When Samantha brought Zoe on board, she made it clear that she was in charge now. The old ways of doing business were over. If anyone wanted to stay, they needed to adapt. It wasn't just the leadership team that needed reorganization. The company's structure was outdated, and its reliance on outdated software was starting to affect the work. Samantha immediately began focusing on two things: revamping the internal systems and expanding the company's reach into new markets. She knew that technology was constantly evolving, and to stay competitive, they needed to stay ahead of the curve. Despite all her hard work, there were still obstacles that came with the transition. Some of the employees who had been with the company for years were hesitant about the changes. They didn't trust Samantha yet, and many were still loyal to Ryan. They resisted her leadership and had doubts about her vision. Samantha knew that gaining their trust would take time, but she was determined. She worked tirelessly, reaching out to employees, encouraging feedback, and ensuring that they understood the direction she was taking. At times, it felt like the mountain she was climbing was too steep. Every move she made seemed to be met with resistance, both from the employees who weren't fully on board and from competitors who were ready to pounce on any weakness they perceived. But Samantha remained focused, determined to prove to them that the company wasn't just surviving. It was about to thrive. She wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way. Then came a moment that would test Samantha's resolve. One of the senior developers, Greg, who had been the most vocal in supporting her return, came to her with bad news. A major client, one that made up a significant portion of the company's revenue, was threatening to leave. They weren't satisfied with the latest updates, and they had already started looking for alternative service providers. The pressure mounted, but Samantha refused to panic. She called Greg and the leadership team into her office to discuss the situation. The team was ready to buckle under the weight of the news, but Samantha knew this was the moment to prove to them what they were capable of. "We're not going to let them walk away," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We're going to fix this, and we're going to make sure they understand that no one else can deliver the service we provide. We're not going to beg them to stay. We're going to show them the value of what we offer. It wasn't just a chance to save a client. It was a chance to show her team that they could adapt and succeed no matter what obstacles stood in their way. Over the next few days, Samantha and her team worked around the clock. They fixed the bugs, updated the software, and made adjustments based on the client's feedback. By the end of the week, they were able to not only meet the client's expectations, but exceed them. The client didn't leave. In fact, they signed a new contract, one that would expand their relationship with the company for years to come. This was a turning point. The employees saw it. Samantha had delivered when it mattered most. She had proven to them that she was the leader they needed. But the most important lesson Samantha took from that experience was that leadership wasn't just about having the vision. It was about trusting your team, empowering them to succeed, and staying calm under pressure. She had led her team through their first major crisis as a new leader, and they had come out stronger for it. With each victory, however small, Samantha's confidence grew. She was no longer the underdog trying to prove herself. She was the leader who had taken control of her own future and the future of the company. But she knew the journey wasn't over. There were more challenges ahead, and she was ready for them. The company was beginning to stabilize, and Samantha's decisions were starting to pay off. The system was running smoothly, the clients were pleased, and the team was beginning to see her leadership in action. But with every success came new challenges. The more she solidified her role, the more the competition began to notice. Other companies, some of whom had once viewed her company as a minor player, were starting to see her as a real threat. This, Samantha knew, was inevitable, but she had to prepare for the fallout. One morning, she received a call from Greg, her right-hand man, with urgent news. A competitor, one that had always been one step ahead of them in terms of market share, had just launched a similar software solution. The product had an uncanny resemblance to the software that Samantha had built, and the launch had been swift, leaving her with little time to react. It was a blatant copy of her work, and now the company was facing the threat of a lawsuit. Samantha listened carefully, her mind racing. She had anticipated that someone would eventually try to replicate her success, but she hadn't expected it to happen so quickly and so openly. This wasn't just a business challenge. This was personal. They were taking her ideas, her hard work, and trying to profit from it. But Samantha wasn't about to back down. "We're not going to let this slide," she said firmly to Greg. "They can copy the product, but they can't replicate the expertise, the years of experience, and the customer relationships we've built. We'll fight this. We need to take action, and we need to do it now." She hung up the phone and sat in her office, staring out the window. The competition had thrown down the gauntlet, but Samantha was ready for it. She knew the value of her company's work. She knew the intricate layers of the software better than anyone else. They had no idea what they were up against. Her first step was to contact her legal team. She had already begun preparing a case, and she knew that this lawsuit could be long and grueling, but it would send a message. No one was going to steal her hard work and get away with it. It was time to show them that her company wasn't a target to be picked off. It was a force to be reckoned with. Samantha's next move was strategic. She reached out to key clients, the ones who had been with the company since the early days. She needed their support, not just in terms of loyalty, but in the form of testimonials. These clients had seen firsthand how Samantha had built the software, how she had worked tirelessly to ensure that it was a product that worked for their specific needs. She needed them to stand by her side, to speak out about how her company had helped them grow, and how they couldn't afford to trust a competitor who was simply copying ideas without understanding the real needs of the industry. While she worked on the legal and business front, she also had to deal with internal pressure. Some of her employees, though loyal, were nervous. They had never seen the company in such a vulnerable position. Samantha knew that this was a critical time for her to show them what kind of leader she was. She called a company-wide meeting, bringing everyone together to lay out the situation and reassure them. "We are facing a challenge," she began, her voice steady and confident. "But it's not one we can't overcome. This company was built on trust, integrity, and the drive to innovate. We have created something special, and no competitor can take that away from us. We will not only defend our position, we will grow stronger from this. Our customers believe in us and they know that we offer more than just software. We offer solutions tailored to their needs, and that's what will set us apart from anyone who tries to copy us." Her speech wasn't just about boosting morale, it was about reaffirming her role as the leader of the company, the one who would not be intimidated by competition, no matter how fierce it was. Her confidence and determination shone through, and by the end of the meeting, the employees were rallying behind her, ready to face whatever came next. But the battle wasn't over. The competition wasn't going to back down, and Samantha knew that there would be more hurdles ahead. She had to prepare for the worst, but she also knew that she couldn't let this situation distract her from her bigger vision. The company still had room to grow, and despite the legal battles and the competition, she was determined to keep pushing forward. As she sat in her office, staring at the legal documents and strategic plans in front of her, Samantha realized that this was just another test, another challenge to her leadership. And she would rise to meet it, just as she always had. The stakes were higher than they had ever been, but Samantha knew that she was in control, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone take that from her. The legal battle with the competitor was just beginning, but Samantha was prepared for the long haul. She knew that it wouldn't be a quick fight, but she wasn't about to back down. Every day, she and her legal team worked tirelessly to ensure that they had every piece of evidence needed to prove that the software was her intellectual property. The competitor's claims of similarities were baseless. She had designed every aspect of the system from the ground up, and she had the documentation to prove it. But even as she prepared for the upcoming court dates, another problem began to surface. The media started picking up on the story, and suddenly the company was under a magnifying glass. Samantha was no stranger to the pressure of being in the spotlight, but now it felt different. She wasn't just a leader. She was now a symbol of resilience, someone who had been wronged and was fighting back. She had to keep her cool. The company's reputation was at stake. The public had to see her as not just a victim of corporate greed, but as a fighter, someone who could take control and turn a setback into a comeback. The media frenzy only fueled the competitors' tactics. They had deeper pockets and were well connected, using every resource to push their narrative that Samantha's company was in disarray. The headlines claimed that the company was fighting an internal collapse, casting doubt on her ability to lead. It wasn't just a legal battle now, it was a PR war, but Samantha was determined to not let this affect her leadership. She focused her energy on what she could control. First, she called in her senior team, including Greg, who had been invaluable throughout the entire process. They discussed their strategy and how they would continue to deliver the quality service their clients expected, despite the external noise. Samantha reassured them that their job was to stay focused on the work that mattered, and not let the media or competitors divert their attention. "Don't let the media dictate our success," she said, her voice firm. "We know our worth, and our clients know our worth. We're not going to let anyone take that from us." The next step was to meet with her top clients personally. Samantha knew that their trust in the company was paramount, and she needed to be transparent. She held a series of one-on-one meetings, speaking directly to the clients who had supported her from the start. She reassured them that despite the noise, the company was still strong. The software updates were continuing, the improvements were being rolled out, and the issues with the competitors' accusations would not affect their service. Samantha wasn't just fixing the external challenges, she was also focusing on improving internal morale. The employees, many of whom were feeling the weight of the ongoing legal battle, needed leadership now more than ever. She doubled down on her efforts to provide a sense of security within the company. She took time to meet with every department, listened to concerns, and made sure everyone felt supported. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of meetings, Samantha sat in her office, staring at the stack of paperwork in front of her. The weight of the responsibility, the external pressure, and the constant scrutiny were starting to wear on her. But as she looked out at the city below, she remembered why she was doing this. She wasn't just fighting for the company. She was fighting for her legacy. She was fighting for the chance to prove that she could come back stronger and that she was capable of leading the company into the future. Ryan's voice echoed in her head from all those years ago. "You're replaceable." It had been said in passing, but it had stayed with her ever since. Now, as she sat in her office, she realized just how wrong he had been. She wasn't replaceable. She was irreplaceable. And the company's future wasn't just about the software she had built, it was about the vision she had for what it could become. The following week, a breakthrough came. Samantha's legal team uncovered a crucial piece of evidence, an email from one of the competitor's developers that clearly showed they had copied proprietary code from her system. It was the smoking gun they needed. This wasn't just a legal victory, it was a game changer. With this evidence, the competitor's claims fell apart. The case went from a potential long, drawn-out battle to one that could be resolved quickly. Samantha knew this was the turning point. She wasn't just going to win the lawsuit, she was going to take back what was rightfully hers. The company was about to experience a resurgence, and with it, she would secure her place as the undisputed leader. As the lawsuit concluded, Samantha's victory felt bittersweet. The competitor, with its deep pockets and aggressive legal tactics, had tried to destroy her, but Samantha had come out on top. The evidence had spoken for itself. She was the rightful creator of the software, and their attempt to copy it had been nothing more than a cheap attempt to steal from her. The company's reputation had been restored, but the battle had left its scars. But the victory didn't feel like an end. It felt like a beginning. While the legal issues had been settled, the true challenge for Samantha was not just reclaiming control of the company, but leading it to a new era of success. The pressure to deliver was immense, and she knew that now more than ever, her leadership had to shine. The board was watching her closely, and so were the employees. They had all seen what she could do under pressure, but now it was time to prove that she could lead them to a new height of innovation and growth. The first step in Samantha's plan was to address the board. She called for a meeting, inviting everyone to discuss the company's future. The last time she had sat in front of them, she had been dismissed, undermined, and fired. But now, things were different. She was no longer the person scrambling for validation. She had earned their respect, and she was ready to take the reins. In the meeting, Samantha laid out her vision for the future of the company. She was no longer interested in maintaining the status quo. The company had spent too long stuck in its old ways, and the competition was catching up. She wanted to lead the company into the future, integrating new technologies, improving their customer relationships, and expanding their reach. She knew that in the tech industry, if you weren't innovating, you were falling behind. "I didn't come back just to fix things," Samantha said, her voice confident and commanding. "I came back to lead. We've built something incredible, but now it's time to take it to the next level. We have the tools, we have the talent, and now we need the courage to evolve. I've been in the trenches with this company for years. I know exactly where we need to go, and I'm ready to take us there." Her words were met with nods of agreement from some members of the board, but others looked hesitant. They had been through a lot, and the scars of the lawsuit were still fresh. Samantha could see the fear in their eyes. They were afraid of change, afraid of taking risks, but she wasn't going to let that hold her back. "I know some of you are worried," she continued. "I know that change is difficult, but the reality is, if we don't change, we'll be left behind. I'm not here to push you to take risks recklessly. I'm here to guide this company through a process of growth and evolution. We've built something incredible together, and now it's time to build something even greater. Samantha's words were met with silence at first, but the room began to stir with conversation. Some of the board members were still unsure, but others were beginning to come around. The seed of change had been planted. They knew that they couldn't afford to sit on their laurels anymore. They had to act. The next few weeks were crucial. Samantha worked tirelessly, refining her vision for the company's growth and reaching out to potential partners and investors who could help propel the company forward. She spent more time with her team, ensuring that they were on board with her ideas and working alongside them to fine-tune the plans. But even as she continued to make strides, the competition was still lurking in the background. The company had weathered the storm, but other competitors who had seen the flaws in their own models were now eyeing Samantha's company with interest. She knew that she had to stay one step ahead. Ryan's departure had left a power vacuum in the company, and while some of the old guard remained loyal to him, most employees were now looking to Samantha for leadership. She couldn't afford to let complacency take hold. Every decision she made would have a direct impact on the future of the company, and she had to be strategic with her next moves. It was time to take the fight to the competition, not just legally or through strategy, but through sheer innovation. Samantha knew that the only way to stay ahead was to keep innovating, to keep pushing boundaries, and that's exactly what she planned to do. As she sat in her office, looking over the latest market research, Samantha felt the weight of her responsibility, but she also felt a sense of excitement. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to take the company to new heights. She wasn't just playing catch-up anymore. She was leading the way. As the company began to regain its footing, Samantha was relentless in pushing forward with her vision. The changes she had implemented were beginning to take shape, but she knew the work wasn't over yet. The pressure to keep innovating, expanding, and pushing the company ahead of its competitors was constant. The markets were shifting, and her competitors were watching, waiting for a misstep. Samantha knew that staying one step ahead was the only way to secure her place as the undisputed leader of the company. With each passing week, her team grew more cohesive, more aligned with her vision. They had become a unit, each person understanding their role and the company's larger goals. But as expected, some employees remained hesitant about the rapid pace of change. They had been loyal to Ryan, and while many were grateful for Samantha's return, a few weren't sure about her new direction. They were comfortable with the old ways, the tried and true methods that had worked in the past. Samantha didn't have time to dwell on the doubters. She had to move quickly. She began to ramp up her efforts to push new initiatives, updating existing products and building new ones that would set her company apart in the marketplace. The tech industry moved at lightning speed, and Samantha understood the importance of staying ahead of the curve. She had to create the next big thing, but she wasn't going to do it alone. She needed her team's creative minds and their expertise to help bring her vision to life. One of her first projects was a new software tool that could integrate seamlessly with existing company products, making it easier for clients to scale their operations. Samantha had always been one step ahead when it came to the needs of her customers, and she wanted to create a product that would solve real-world problems and drive customer satisfaction. It wasn't just about the software. It was about creating a solution that would save businesses time and money, making their operations more efficient and effective. Samantha worked closely with her development team to design the software. She held daily stand-up meetings to ensure everything was moving forward smoothly, but she also took time to hear from her team members. She valued their input, and she knew that the best ideas came from collaboration, not from top-down leadership. Slowly but surely, the product began to take shape, and it looked like it would be the game changer she had hoped for. However, her competitors weren't sitting idle. Samantha had anticipated their moves, but she also knew that they had far more resources and connections at their disposal. She had to act quickly. When the product was ready for its beta release, she decided to hold a private event, inviting key clients and industry leaders to witness firsthand what her company had created. It was a high-risk move, but Samantha was confident in the product's potential. The night of the event, as Samantha stood in front of the crowd, explaining the new software, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. This was her moment. The moment she proved that not only was she capable of leading this company, but she could take it to new heights. The room was filled with key decision makers from top companies, and the buzz was palpable. By the end of her presentation, there was no question in anyone's mind that this product would change the game. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and the partnerships that followed were crucial in securing her company's place as a leader in the industry. However, with success came new challenges. Her competitor, the one who had tried to steal her software, wasn't content to let her win this easily. They had been watching her every move, and as soon as they saw the success of the launch, they went on the offensive. They started spreading rumors, claiming that Samantha's new product was flawed, that it wasn't as secure as she promised. The timing was no coincidence. This was their attempt to undermine her success, and it was personal. The company's recent resurgence had positioned her as a rising star in the tech industry, but it also made her a target. Her competitor, who had attempted to discredit her product, was not finished. They had already begun countering the positive publicity with a new wave of attacks, using smear tactics and veiled threats to tarnish her reputation. They accused her company of inflating their numbers and creating products that didn't live up to their promises. Samantha wasn't naive. She had expected this. Her rise had rattled her competitors, and now they were desperate to stop her. However, Samantha wasn't going to sit back and let them tear down everything she had built. She knew her best defense wasn't just to fight back. It was to continue proving her worth through innovation. In a series of meetings with her team, Samantha outlined the next phase of her plan. The company had already established its reputation for innovation, but they needed to continue pushing forward. The software had gained traction, but now she needed to build an ecosystem around it, something that would integrate their systems with client operations in a way that made the product indispensable. She envisioned a suite of tools that would transform how businesses used their technology, making it more valuable, more connected, and more efficient than any other competitor's offering. But there was a problem. The company's infrastructure, while solid, wasn't ready for this kind of expansion. They needed a better system in place to handle the rapid increase in customer demand, and more importantly, they needed to scale without losing their edge. Samantha called in her best engineers, her most trusted advisors, and they spent days working on a new plan, an ambitious one that would integrate artificial intelligence with the core software. The idea was to make the software not just a tool, but a partner in the client's success. It was a huge risk, but one that Samantha believed was worth taking. Meanwhile, the pressure from her competitors continued to mount. The rival company launched a new marketing campaign aimed at pulling customers away from her. They claimed that their product was now more robust, more secure, and more cost-effective. They made bold promises and painted her company as inexperienced and untrustworthy. It wasn't a coincidence that they launched their campaign shortly after the success of Samantha's product. This was personal, and they were trying to fight fire with fire. Samantha didn't respond with anger. Instead, she used their attacks as fuel to accelerate her own plans. She knew that if she played her cards right, she could turn this into a turning point, not just for her company, but for the entire industry. So she doubled down. Her team worked day and night, creating the next iteration of the software. They didn't just add new features, they built a robust AI-powered platform that would deliver custom solutions for every client based on their specific needs. By the time the next quarter rolled around, Samantha had not only developed a superior product, but she had also secured major partnerships with clients who trusted her vision. The new AI-driven platform was a game changer. offering predictive analytics, customizable dashboards, and more. It was clear to the industry that Samantha was not only able to innovate, but to do so in ways that her competitors hadn't even thought of. During a pivotal moment in an industry conference, Samantha had the chance to present her new platform. As she spoke about the potential of the new system, her confidence was evident. She didn't just pitch the product, she showed its value. She demonstrated its real world applications and how it could streamline operations for businesses worldwide. The response was overwhelming. It wasn't just about the product anymore, it was about Samantha herself. The competitor, meanwhile, was still reeling from Samantha's success. Their own products were starting to show cracks, and the pressure of trying to keep up was taking a toll on their leadership. As the competition began to stumble, Samantha's company only grew stronger. They were ready to take the industry by storm, and no one was going to stop them. Samantha's company was now a force to be reckoned with. The new AI-driven platform had gained significant traction in the market, and her leadership was starting to be recognized globally. The once small, struggling tech company had transformed into a major player in the industry, thanks to Samantha's vision, her team's dedication, and her relentless drive to innovate. But as success continued to unfold, new challenges emerged. Samantha had always been ready for the hurdles of entrepreneurship, but this new phase was different. The company had grown faster than anyone anticipated, and with that growth came complexity. Managing a larger team, handling international clients, and keeping the company's creative edge while scaling up had become a balancing act. Samantha was finding it difficult to maintain the same personal touch she had once had with her team. One afternoon, while reviewing the latest quarterly reports, Samantha felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The weight of the company's success was heavier than she had imagined. The growing demand for the platform, the need for constant updates, and the challenges of managing a team across multiple regions were taking a toll on her. She hadn't expected to feel like this, overwhelmed, stretched thin, and questioning whether she could continue to carry the burden alone. She called a meeting with her leadership team, including Greg and Zoe, to discuss how they could keep up with the rapid expansion. Samantha knew that something needed to change in the company's structure. She could no longer manage everything herself, and she couldn't afford to sacrifice the company's quality and creativity in the name of growth. They needed to implement more efficient processes, delegate better, and, most importantly, invest in new leadership talent. At the meeting, Samantha laid out her concerns. "We've come so far, but I'm starting to feel like we're spreading ourselves too thin," she said. "We need to build a stronger management team. We need to hire experienced leaders who can handle the day-to-day and allow us to focus on the vision." Greg and Zoe agreed. They had seen how hard Samantha had worked to get the company to where it was, but they also understood that the business could only grow if they started delegating and trusting others to take on more responsibility. They began brainstorming ideas for hiring new senior executives who could handle the operational side while allowing Samantha to focus on innovation and strategy. While Samantha was making internal changes, the external landscape was evolving as well. Other companies were beginning to take notice of the platform's success. Some were trying to replicate the AI-driven system, while others were partnering with Samantha's competitors, hoping to get a piece of the tech market. The competition was growing more intense, and Samantha knew that she couldn't afford to become complacent. A few weeks later, an unexpected development shook the industry: a massive partnership deal between two of her competitors. The deal involved merging resources, sharing technologies, and creating a joint product line. On paper, it looked like a powerful alliance, one that could challenge Samantha's company directly. The media buzzed with excitement over the new partnership, and Samantha's competitors were using it to attract clients away from her. Samantha didn't panic, though. She had learned to weather storms before. Instead, she saw this as a call to action. She understood that the market would only continue to evolve, and she needed to stay ahead of the curve. The first step was to double down on the innovation that had gotten her to this point. Samantha immediately called her R&D team to begin working on the next big feature for her platform, something that would differentiate her company from the competition and keep her ahead of the curve. At the same time, she made the decision to expand her leadership team. After much deliberation, she hired two senior executives with a wealth of experience in scaling tech companies. One would oversee operations and ensure that the company's growth remained sustainable, while the other would focus on global sales and client relationships. This move wasn't just about growth. It was about making sure the company could scale without losing its heart and its creativity. The pressure was still there, but Samantha now felt more in control. She had assembled a team that could support her vision while also giving her the space to focus on long-term growth. With the leadership team in place and a new focus on innovation, Samantha knew her company was on the right path. The real test, however, would come when the competitor's new partnership began to gain traction. Samantha wasn't naive. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But she also knew that she wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. She was fighting for a legacy, and Samantha was ready to take whatever steps were necessary to ensure that her company would continue to thrive. As the months passed, Samantha's company began to shine brighter than ever. The new product features she had introduced were a hit, gaining traction in markets across the globe. The competition was fierce, but Samantha was no longer concerned about falling behind. With the new leadership team in place and her company's culture becoming more collaborative, she knew she was on the right path.
The new senior executives had fit in seamlessly, each taking charge of their respective departments and helping the company scale in ways Samantha had only dreamed of when she first started. But it wasn't just about the technology or the growth anymore. Samantha had become a different kind of leader, one who understood that a company's success depended on more than just its product. It was about the people. It was about creating an environment where everyone felt valued, where innovation thrived, and where work wasn't just a job, it was a mission. One day, while in a meeting with her team, Samantha realized just how far the company had come. She was surrounded by people who had once been hesitant about her leadership, but now they were her strongest supporters. They had seen her transform from the underestimated employee to a visionary leader. She had earned their trust, not through words, but through action. "Remember when we first started working together?" Samantha said, addressing her leadership team. "We were a small, struggling company. But now, look at us. We've taken risks, pushed boundaries, and turned obstacles into opportunities. And we're just getting started." Her words were met with nods of agreement, but there was something more, an understanding that they were part of something bigger. This wasn't just a company anymore. It was a community of like-minded individuals working together to achieve something meaningful. Samantha knew that she wasn't just building a tech company, she was building a legacy. But even as she basked in the success, Samantha couldn't forget about the challenges they had faced. The competitor who had tried to bring her down was still lingering in the background, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The tech industry was volatile, and Samantha knew that success was never guaranteed. Yet, she had learned to embrace uncertainty. Every setback had taught her resilience, every mistake had been a lesson in leadership, and every moment of doubt had been an opportunity for growth. Samantha was no longer just fighting to prove herself. She was fighting to create a future that would impact generations to come. The day arrived when the competitor, who had once tried to steal her ideas, reached out. Their company had been struggling, unable to maintain the momentum they had gained in the past, and now they were ready to negotiate. The tables had turned. The competitor was no longer in a position of power. They were asking for a partnership, a collaboration that would combine their strengths to create something even greater. Samantha was faced with a decision. She could take the high road, prove that she had won, and move on. Or she could use this opportunity to expand her influence, to create something that would solidify her legacy in the tech world. After some careful thought, Samantha knew what she had to do. She agreed to the partnership, but not on their terms. She made it clear that this was going to be a collaboration based on mutual respect and shared vision. She wasn't just going to let them ride her coattails. They had to bring something valuable to the table. She knew that this partnership could open up new avenues for her company, and she was determined to ensure that it would be a success on her terms. The announcement of the new collaboration was met with mixed reactions in the industry. Some viewed it as a strategic move, while others saw it as a surrender to the competition. But Samantha knew better. She wasn't conceding, she was expanding. The competitor had no idea what they were about to walk into. Samantha was playing the long game. With the deal finalized, Samantha shifted her focus. She started looking ahead, at the next phase of her company's journey. There were new markets to explore, new technologies to innovate, and new leaders to mentor. But more than that, she was determined to leave a legacy that would inspire others to believe in their own power, to take risks, and to never stop pushing forward. And as Samantha stood on the stage at a major industry conference, receiving an award for her company's innovation and success, she realized that this moment wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had stood by her, believed in her, and worked tirelessly to make her vision a reality. She had created something bigger than herself. She had created a movement. The future was bright, and Samantha knew that she had only just begun.